Top 20 celebrity best friends who are enemies on screen. What if the most ruthless enemies in cinematic history were actually each other's greatest lives in real life? While the world watched Magneto and Professor X tear the universe apart over mutant survival, the men behind the masks, Sir Ian McKellen and Sir Patrick Stewart, were building an unbreakable brotherhood that defies every Hollywood cliché. Their on-screen friction defined the V in Variation, a brutal war of ideologies, but their off-screen bond is the ultimate victory for humanity. It's a paradox that proves the most convincing hatred is only possible through absolute, unconditional trust. But in the battle for our future, who was truly right? Charles's dream of peace or Eric's cold realism? Drop a peace or war in the comments and tell us why. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Celebrity Couples Hollywood for more untold stories. Brie Larson and Shailene Woodley. In the delicate sun-drenched landscape of indie cinema, the spectacular Now introduced a collision of two distinct female archetypes, Cassidy and Amy. Brie Larson's Cassidy radiated the effortless, intimidating confidence of a popular high school queen, acting as the stinging reminder of a past romance. In stark contrast, Shailene Woodley's Amy was the embodiment of raw vulnerability, a quiet, bookish soul venturing into the unpredictable waters of first love. On screen, they were the V in Validation, two young women inadvertently competing for the same boy's heart, representing the painful transition from the comfort of the known to the bravery of the unknown. Their subtle rivalry captured the bittersweet essence of adolescent jealousy and the quiet ache of seeing someone else step into the space you once occupied. However, once the cameras ceased rolling, this cinematic friction dissolved into a profound, soul-deep sisterhood that defied Hollywood stereotypes. Instead of succumbing to the industry's habit of pitting young actresses against one another, Larson and Woodley discovered an elemental kinship. They bypassed superficial small talk, choosing instead to anchor their friendship in radical honesty and emotional depth. Brie has frequently described their bond as deeply spiritual, noting that every reunion is marked by a visceral outpouring of affection. Think long embraces, shared tears, and an unspoken understanding that requires no explanation. Their relationship stands as a defiant victory over the narrative of female competition. While Cassidy and Amy were separated by the ghost of a shared boyfriend, Brie and Shailene are united by shared values and a commitment to authenticity. They don't just admire each other's filmography, they champion each other's growth as humans. For the audience, knowing that these two powerhouses share such an intimate, supportive reality adds a luminous layer to the film. It proves that even when playing characters who are worlds apart, the actors can be tethered by a bond that is truly spectacular. Madeline Petch and Lily Reinhart. In the fog-shrouded, neon-lit streets of Riverdale, the atmosphere is often thick with the electric tension between Cheryl Blossom and Betty Cooper. On screen, they are the V in Vendetta, a high-stakes collision between the privileged, red-lipped Ice Queen and the detective-minded, wholesome blonde. Their dynamic shifted constantly from bitter academic rivals to reluctant allies, fueled by family secrets and the dark undercurrents of their shared town. Cheryl's razor-sharp insults and Betty's unwavering moral compass created a friction that defined the show's early seasons, leaving fans perpetually wondering if they would ever find common ground or simply burn their bridges for good. But as the director shouts, "Cut!" the ice thaws into a radiant, unbreakable sisterhood. Beyond the script, Madeline and Lily have navigated the turbulent waters of sudden stardom, heavy production schedules, and intense public scrutiny together. Their connection isn't just a surface-level Hollywood alliance. It's a lifeline forged in the fires of shared trauma and triumph. When both actresses underwent significant personal breakups simultaneously, they didn't retreat into isolation. Instead, they leaned on each other, turning their private heartbreak into a shared journey of healing and self-discovery. This authentic solidarity even manifested in a joyful, viral TikTok account, offering fans a glimpse into a world where the only thing they compete for is the best comedic timing. This is the ultimate victory of their friendship, proving that the most competitive environments can still foster the most compassionate support systems. While Cheryl and Betty were often forced apart by the chaos of their town, Madeline and Lily have chosen to remain inseparable. They attend each other's premieres, celebrate personal milestones, and champion one another's mental health. For the fans, this bond transforms Riverdale from a show about conflict into a testament to real-life resilience. It's a beautiful reminder that even when your characters are world-class rivals, your hearts can be perfectly in sync. Lisa Ann Walter and Elaine Hendrix. In the nostalgic, sun-kissed world of The Parent Trap, no two characters stood at more polar opposites than Chessie and Meredith Blake. On screen, they were the V in values, a visceral collision between the warm, salt-of-the-earth housekeeper and the cold, diamond-clad socialite vying for a spot in the Parker family. Their dynamic was a masterclass in comedic friction. Chessie's suspicious, protective glares met Meredith's razor-sharp arrogance, creating an iconic domestic war. To the audience, they represented the eternal battle between authentic love and calculated ambition, making every subtle jab and side-eye a highlight of the cinematic experience. Yet the true magic happened when the cameras stopped rolling. In a twist more heartwarming than the film itself, the woman who played the wicked stepmother-to-be and the one who played the soul of the house forged a bond that has endured for over a quarter century. While their characters occupied entirely different social strata, Lisa and Elaine found a rare, unshakable wavelength in reality. They turned a brief professional encounter in 1998 into a lifetime of solidarity, proving that the most antagonistic roles can blossom into the most harmonious friendships. They didn't just stay in touch, they became each other's chosen family, attending every major red carpet, birthday, and life milestone as a united front. This is the ultimate victory of their connection. In an industry often criticized for its fleeting relationships, Walter and Hendrix have built a fortress of loyalty. They frequently delight fans by appearing together at award shows or recreating iconic moments on social media, showing that while Meredith Blake may have hated the staff, Elaine Hendrix absolutely cherishes her best friend. Their friendship is a beautiful reminder that the roles we play do not define the people we become. For generations of fans, seeing the housekeeper and the villain laughing together decades later is the happiest ending a movie could ever have. Ashley Tisdale and Vanessa Hudgens. In the neon-colored, high-energy corridors of East High, the spotlight was the ultimate battlefield for Sharpay Evans and Gabriella Montez. On screen, they represented the V in Versus, a classic clash between the relentless, pink-clad ambition of a theater veteran and the shy, effortless brilliance of a newcomer. Their friction was the engine of High School Musical, a tug-of-war for the stage and the soul of the school. Sharpay's calculated schemes and Gabriella's earnest melodies created a cinematic rivalry that defined a generation, embodying the tension between those who demand the spotlight and those who naturally illuminate it. For fans, their characters were the personification of frenemies, locked in a glittering struggle for the status of leading lady. However, the moment the final curtain dropped, the rivalry vanished, revealing a friendship far more enduring than any stage production. In a delightful twist of fate, Ashley and Vanessa had actually forged a bond a year before the Disney phenomenon even began, meeting on the set of a commercial. Instead of allowing the diva versus sweetheart narrative to seep into their reality, they chose a path of radical support. Through the dizzying heights of global superstardom, they remained each other's steady anchors. They didn't just share the screen, they shared life's most intimate chapters, from navigating the pressures of fame to standing by each other as bridesmaids. Vanessa even holds the sacred title of godmother to Ashley's first child, a testament to a connection that has evolved from teenage co-stars into lifelong sisters. This is the true victory of their journey. They dismantled the Hollywood trope that two powerful young women must be competitors to succeed. While Sharpay and Gabriella were often at odds over a trophy or a boy, Ashley and Vanessa have spent 2 decades cheering for one another's happiness. Their relationship is a radiant example of how genuine sisterhood can thrive behind the scenes of a competitive industry. For every fan who grew up watching them clash on Disney Channel, seeing them still inseparable today is the ultimate happily ever after. They prove that while roles are temporary, the harmony of a true friendship is timeless. Jim Parsons and Wil Wheaton. In the geek-chic universe of The Big Bang Theory, few things triggered a meltdown quite like the sight of Wil Wheaton in Sheldon Cooper's presence. On screen, they were the V in Vengeance, a hilarious, high-stakes feud between a socially rigid genius and a former child star who loved playing the villain. Their rivalry was born from a missed autograph at a 1995 convention, a slight Sheldon nursed for decades until Wheaton became his ultimate arch-nemesis. This dynamic was a masterclass in comedic pettiness. Will's mischievous delight in pushing Sheldon's buttons met Parsons' iconic, high-pitched indignation, creating some of the sitcom's most memorable power struggles. To the audience, they were the personification of a Star Trek fan's worst nightmare and funniest fantasy combined. However, behind the laughter and the scripted grudges, the reality was a harmonious partnership built on professional admiration. Far from being enemies, Jim Parsons and Wil Wheaton shared a connection rooted in a deep appreciation for the craft of comedy. While Sheldon was adding Will to his list of mortal enemies, Jim was actually relishing the chance to work with a fellow actor who understood the nuances of the show's unique rhythm. Wheaton has often joked about how much fun it was to play the evil version of himself, while Parsons admired the effortless charisma Will brought to the set. Their off-screen rapport provided the necessary trust to make their on-screen friction feel authentic, yet lighthearted, proving that it takes a true friend to play a convincing foe. This is the ultimate victory of their collaboration. They turned a fictional rivalry into a beloved staple of television history, showing that the best adversaries are often those who can't wait to grab a drink together once the cameras stop rolling. While Sheldon struggled to move past his childhood disappointment, Jim and Will built a relationship defined by mutual respect. For the fans, knowing that the Wheaton scream was fueled by real-life camaraderie makes their scenes even more delightful. They remind us that in the world of entertainment, the most enduring bonds are formed when you can laugh at yourself alongside your supposed worst. Russell Crowe and Hugh Jackman. In the rain-slicked revolutionary streets of 19th century France, no pursuit was more relentless than that of Inspector Javert for the fugitive Jean Valjean. On screen, they were the V in Virtue, a titanic clash between two opposing definitions of morality. Crowe's Javert was the unbending steel of the law, while Jackman's Valjean was the desperate fire of redemption. Their friction was the spiritual backbone of Les Miserables, a decades-long hunt where every confrontation crackled with the weight of heaven and hell. To the audience, they represented the agonizing struggle between unforgiving justice and transformative mercy, culminating in a cinematic rivalry that felt as ancient as time itself. However, once the final notes of the revolution faded, the iron-cold animosity vanished into one of Hollywood's most legendary and supportive brotherhoods. Far from being adversaries, Russell Crowe and Hugh Jackman share a bond rooted in a shared Australian heritage and a deep mutual respect for the performing arts. In a remarkable display of professional generosity, it was actually Crowe who helped pave the way for Jackman's global career, even suggesting Hugh for the role of Wolverine when he turned it down himself. Instead of a hunter and his prey, they are mentors and confidants who have navigated the pressures of superstardom by leaning on one another. Whether they are sharing a stage for a charity performance or cheering for each other's award wins, their connection is defined by an authentic mateship that is impenetrable. This is the ultimate victory of their story. They prove that the most intense on-screen battles are best fought by those who trust each other implicitly behind the scenes. While Javert and Valjean could never find peace in each other's presence, Russell and Hugh have found a lifelong sanctuary in their friendship. For fans, seeing these two titans of cinema embrace off-camera isn't just a heartwarming image. It's a reminder that empathy is far more powerful than the labels we wear. They demonstrate that while the law may be rigid, the capacity for human connection is boundless. Daisy Ridley and Adam Driver. In a galaxy fractured by war and ancient mysticism, the bond between Rey and Kylo Ren was the beating heart of the Star Wars sequel trilogy. On screen, they were the V in Vortex, a swirling, chaotic connection between a lonely scavenger searching for belonging and a fallen prince consumed by shadow. Their friction was unlike anything else in the franchise. It was a psychic tether that bypassed physical space, forcing two enemies to share their deepest fears and aspirations. Kylo's volatile intensity and Rey's resilient hope created a cinematic duality that kept audiences on the edge of their seats. They represented the eternal conflict between legacy and choice, a rivalry where every lightsaber clash felt as much like a conversation as a battle. However, beyond the dramatic starships and star-killer bases, the reality was a partnership defined by quiet, professional reverence. Far from the emotional turmoil of their characters, Daisy Ridley and Adam Driver cultivated a bond rooted in a shared, intense dedication to their craft. Daisy has frequently marveled at Adam's generosity as an actor, noting how his focused energy pushed her to find new depths in her own performance. Adam, known for his private and serious nature, found in Daisy a trustworthy ally who could match his commitment. Instead of letting the heavy themes of the Force divide them, they used their off-screen rapport to build a foundation of safety, allowing them to explore the raw, vulnerable moments that made their characters' journey so impactful. This is the ultimate victory of their collaboration. They proved that the most complex on-screen dynamics require the highest level of off-screen trust. While Rey and Kylo were often separated by the vastness of space and the darkness of the dark side, Daisy and Adam remained united by a mutual respect that transcended the screen. For fans, seeing the actors share a laugh during a press tour or a quiet word behind the scenes is the perfect counterbalance to the tragedy of the Skywalker saga. They remind us that while the battle between light and dark is a timeless story, the bridge built by two artists working in harmony is the true force to be reckoned with. Dylan O'Brien and Will Poulter. Within the towering, shifting walls of the Glade, survival demanded order, a philosophy that put Thomas and Gally on a collision course from the moment they met. On screen, they were the V in Velocity, a high-stakes friction between the impulsive, freedom-seeking newcomer and the hardened, rule-bound enforcer. Their rivalry was the psychological anchor of the Maze Runner. Thomas represented the terrifying hope of the unknown, while Gally embodied the defensive anger of the status quo. Every confrontation, from their brutal wrestling matches to their final, heartbreaking standoff, crackled with a raw, physical intensity. To the audience, they were the personification of a generational split, the drive to break out versus the instinct to stay safe, no matter the cost. However, once the dust of the Glade settled, this adversarial tension evaporated into a brotherhood famous for its humor and warmth. Far from the scowls and threats seen on screen, Dylan O'Brien and Will Poulter share a bond so lighthearted it has become a favorite legend among fans. Instead of letting the darkness of their characters linger, they spent their time on set constantly apologizing for the aggression required by their roles. Their off-screen relationship is defined by a shared sense of the absurd. They've often described their connection as a serious romance, characterized by playful banter and an easy, effortless rapport. They proved that the trust required to film a convincing fight scene is the same trust that builds a lifelong friendship. This is the ultimate victory of their journey. They demonstrated that even in a franchise built on survival and suspicion, the strongest foundation is actually camaraderie. While Thomas and Gally were often separated by blood and betrayal, Dylan and Will have remained inseparable in their mutual support. Whether they are joking in interviews about their hidden chemistry or cheering for each other's career triumphs, their connection is a radiant example of how to balance professional intensity with personal joy. For fans, knowing that these two enemies were actually best friends making each other laugh between takes adds a layer of heart to the labyrinth. They remind us that while the maze may be dangerous, the friends you find inside make the journey worth the risk. Tom Hardy and Leonardo DiCaprio. In the frozen, unforgiving wilderness of the 1820s American frontier, the survival of Hugh Glass depended on the mercy of a man who had none. On screen, they were the V in Visceral, a primal, blood-soaked collision between John Fitzgerald's cold-blooded pragmatism and Glass's miraculous, soul-driven endurance. Their friction was the pulse of the Revenant. Fitzgerald's decision to bury Glass alive sparked a cinematic hunt defined by agonizing silence and brutal vengeance. DiCaprio's raw, wordless suffering met Hardy's twitchy, self-serving malice, creating a rivalry that felt less like a movie and more like a force of nature. To the audience, they represented the darkest corners of human greed versus the absolute limit of the human will to survive. However, beneath the layers of bare skins and prosthetic scars, the reality was a bond of profound professional brotherhood and playful camaraderie. Far from the murderous intent of their characters, Tom Hardy and Leonardo DiCaprio shared a connection rooted in deep artistic respect. It was DiCaprio who personally recruited Hardy for the role, knowing only Tom could provide the formidable presence needed to push him to his limits. Their off-screen relationship is famous for a light-hearted wager that has become Hollywood legend. Leo bet Tom that his performance would earn an Oscar nomination. When Tom lost the bet, he honored it by tattooing "Leo knows all" on his arm, a permanent humorous tribute to his friend's intuition. This is the ultimate victory of their collaboration. They proved that the most harrowing on-screen animosity can only be achieved through a foundation of absolute off-screen trust. While Fitzgerald and Glass were locked in a death grip amidst the snow, Tom and Leo were partners in a grueling creative marathon, supporting each other through sub-zero temperatures and physical exhaustion. For fans, the "Leo knows all" tattoo is the perfect symbol of their friendship, a reminder that even after playing characters who tried to destroy one another, their bond remains unshakable. They demonstrate that while the Revenant returned for revenge, the actors returned for a lifelong friendship. Michael B. Jordan and Lupita Nyong'o. Within the hidden high-tech borders of Wakanda, the struggle for the nation's soul found its most intense voices in Eric Killmonger and Nakia. On screen, they were the V in Vision, two characters with radically different blueprints for how a superpower should engage with the world. Killmonger was the scarred product of global oppression, a warrior demanding a violent global upheaval, while Nakia was the compassionate spy who believed in helping the world through quiet, targeted aid. Their friction was the intellectual engine of Black Panther. Though they shared a heritage, their methods were light years apart. To the audience, they represented the heavy, real-world debate between burning a broken system down or healing it from within, making every scene they shared feel heavy with the weight of history. However, once the vibranium suits were put away, the intense ideological divide dissolved into a playful, flirtatious, and deeply supportive friendship. Far from the grim seriousness of the throne room, Michael B. Jordan and Lupita Nyong'o share a chemistry that has kept the internet buzzing for years. Their off-screen relationship is defined by a joyous V in vibrancy, a constant stream of light-hearted banter, public teasing, and mutual admiration. Whether they are losing hilarious bets to one another during press tours or posting glowing tributes on social media for birthdays, they embody a modern Hollywood power duo. They proved that even after playing characters locked in a world-changing conflict, the actors could find a common language of laughter and genuine affection. This is the ultimate victory of their connection. They demonstrated that professional rivalry doesn't have to mean personal distance. While Killmonger and Nakia represented two sides of a fractured coin, Michael and Lupita are a united front of black excellence and creative joy. For fans, seeing them joke around on the red carpet provides a beautiful contrast to the film's heavy themes, proving that the most revolutionary act of all is building a lasting, supportive friendship in an industry that often tries to separate us. They remind us that while the battle for Wakanda was fictional, the love and respect they share are very much for the throne. Ben Stiller and Vince Vaughn. In the neon-soaked, sweat-drenched arena of competitive sports satire, no clash was as absurdly entertaining as the one between White Goodman and Peter LaFleur. On screen, they were the V in Vanity, a side-splitting collision between Goodman's hyper-aggressive, spandex-clad ego and LaFleur's laid-back, average Joe nonchalance. Their friction was the comedic engine of Dodgeball. Stiller's over-the-top, menacing insecurity met Vaughn's dry, effortless wit, creating a rivalry where every dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge felt like a battle for the soul of fitness. To the audience, they represented the ultimate parody of corporate greed versus local grit, making their final showdown on the court a timeless highlight of the 2000s comedy. However, once the inflatable cobras were deflated and the purple spandex was tucked away, the intense Average Joe versus Globo Gym animosity evaporated into one of the most prolific creative partnerships in Hollywood. Far from being rivals, Ben Stiller and Vince Vaughn share a bond rooted in a deep mutual comedic rhythm and years of shared history. Part of the legendary Frat Pack, they have collaborated on multiple projects, including Zoolander and Starsky and Hutch, proving that their on-screen chemistry is a byproduct of a profound off-screen friendship. They don't just work together, they elevate each other's performances through a shorthand of humor and trust that only decades of camaraderie can forge. This is the ultimate victory of their connection. They proved that the funniest rivalries are built by those who are completely in sync behind the scenes. In 2017, they even reunited in character for a charity event, showing that while White and Peter might still hate each other's gyms, Ben and Vince are always ready to team up for a good cause. For fans, seeing these two icons trade barbs in interviews with a wink and a smile is the perfect reminder that comedy is best served with a side of true friendship. They demonstrate that while their characters are busy trying to knock each other out, the actors are busy making sure everyone leaves the theater laughing together. Jenna Fisher and Angela Kinsey. In the gray-walled, fluorescent-lit world of Dunder Mifflin Scranton, few dynamics were as consistently icy as the one between Pam Beesly and Angela Martin. On screen, they were the V in Variation, a constant clash of lifestyles and personalities. Pam, the warm and artistic receptionist, often found herself on the receiving end of the judgmental glares and sharp-tongued critiques of Angela, the stern, cat-loving accountant. Their friction was a staple of The Office. Angela's rigid adherence to rules and tradition acted as the perfect foil to Pam's gentle spirit and growth. To the audience, they represented the universal struggle of workplace politics, the difficulty of finding peace with a coworker who seems to exist on a completely different emotional planet. However, the moment the cameras stopped capturing the mundane life of Scranton, that coldness evaporated into one of Hollywood's most authentic and enduring best friendships. Far from the scripted snubs, Jenna Fisher and Angela Kinsey share a bond that is the definition of soul sisters. They forged their connection during the early, uncertain days of filming the pilot, and it has only deepened in the decades since. Instead of the silence seen in the break room, their real-life relationship is a non-stop conversation. They've transformed their shared history into the hit Office Ladies podcast, where they revisit every episode with the kind of laughter and intimacy that only true confidants possess. They didn't just survive the cubicle life together, they thrived, becoming each other's primary support system through every life milestone. This is the ultimate victory of their story. They prove that even in a show built on the awkwardness of human interaction, the strongest result can be a lifetime of love. While Pam and Angela struggled to share a party planning committee meeting without a fight, Jenna and Angela have built a creative empire based on mutual respect. For fans, their podcast is a weekly reminder that the enemies we see on screen are often the people we'd trust most with our secrets. They demonstrate that while the characters were stuck at Dunder Mifflin, the actors found a friendship that is truly world best. Andrew Scott and Benedict Cumberbatch. In the fog-laden, high-stakes streets of modern London, no intellectual collision was as volatile as the one between Sherlock Holmes and Jim Moriarty. On screen, they were the V in virtuosity, a high-functioning match of wits between the cold, analytical detective and the chaotic criminal mastermind. Their friction was the lightning bolt that struck Sherlock. Moriarty wasn't just an enemy, he was the dark mirror reflecting Sherlock's own brilliance and isolation. Benedict's rigid, rapid-fire logic met Andrew's unpredictable operatic madness, creating a rivalry that felt like a dance on the edge of a precipice. To the audience, they represented the thin line between genius and insanity, making their final rooftop confrontation at St. Bart's a haunting masterpiece of television history. However, once the mind games were over and the long coats were hung up, that deadly animosity vanished into a partnership of profound professional respect and genuine friendship. Far from the scripted obsession, Benedict Cumberbatch and Andrew Scott share a connection rooted in their shared theatrical roots and a deep commitment to the actor's craft. While Moriarty was dedicated to burning Sherlock, Andrew was actually building a bridge of camaraderie with Benedict. Their off-screen relationship is defined by a quiet, understated V in valuation, a mutual honoring of each other's talent. Andrew even attended Benedict's wedding, a personal gesture that underscores a closeness rarely seen between such iconic on-screen adversaries. This is the ultimate victory of their collaboration. They proved that the most intense psychological rivalries are best performed by actors who share a foundation of absolute safety and trust. While Sherlock and Moriarty were locked in a game of mutual destruction, Benedict and Andrew were allies in pushing the boundaries of modern television. For fans, seeing these two titans of British acting support each other's diverse projects, from Shakespeare to superhero epics, is the perfect after-show thrill. They demonstrate that while the great game may be over, the friendship between the detective and his villain is the one puzzle that needs no solving. Bryan Cranston and Giancarlo Esposito. In the sun-bleached, meth-fueled underworld of Albuquerque, the rise of Walter White was halted by the terrifyingly calm presence of Gus Fring. On screen, they were the V in volatility, a dangerous chemical reaction between a desperate teacher losing his morality and a disciplined kingpin who operated with surgical precision. Their friction was the high-pressure system of Breaking Bad. Walt's chaotic, ego-driven ambition crashed against Gus's ironclad professionalism and hidden ruthlessness. Every scene they shared felt like a ticking bomb, a silent negotiation for survival where one wrong word could mean total annihilation. To the audience, they represented the transformation of a victim into a monster, and the cold reality of what happens when a scholar tries to outmaneuver a god. However, once the blue crystals were swept away and the lab was destroyed, that lethal animosity dissolved into a partnership of immense warmth and professional reverence. Far from the scripted death threats, Bryan Cranston and Giancarlo Esposito share a bond rooted in their mutual status as masters of the craft. While Gus Fring was plotting Walt's demise, Giancarlo was actually admiring Brian's leadership on set. Their off-screen relationship is defined by a deep V in veneration, a profound respect for the artistic risks they took together. Esposito has frequently described Cranston as a dear friend and a generous collaborator, while Brian has praised Giancarlo's ability to bring such humanity to a character defined by his chilling silence. This is the ultimate victory of their story. They proved that the most terrifying on-screen enemies are born from a place of absolute safety and mutual support. While Walter and Gus were locked in a cat-and-mouse game that ended in tragedy, Brian and Giancarlo have built a friendship that celebrates their shared triumph. For fans, seeing the Heisenberg and the Chicken Man laughing together in real life provides a much-needed relief from the show's darkness. They demonstrate that while the empire may fall, the respect between two titans of acting is the only thing that remains standing. Rupert Grint and Tom Felton. Within the hallowed stone corridors of Hogwarts, no house rivalry burned brighter than the one between the Gryffindors and the Slytherins, personified by Ron Weasley and Draco Malfoy. On screen, they were the V in variation, a sharp socio-economic clash between the humble, hand-me-down warmth of the Weasley family and the cold, silver-spoon entitlement of the Malfoy bloodline. Their friction was the comedic and dramatic seasoning of the Harry Potter saga. Draco's sneering insults and Ron's bumbling yet fierce defense of his friends created a dynamic that fans loved to loathe. To the audience, they represented the timeless struggle between the underdog's heart and the bully's insecurity, making every magical duel and hallway taunt a vivid part of a generation's childhood. However, once the wands were holstered and the house robes were packed away, that scripted animosity transformed into one of the most beloved bromances in the wizarding world. Far from the scowls seen in the Great Hall, Rupert Grint and Tom Felton share a bond rooted in a shared childhood spent growing up in the spotlight. While Draco was busy mocking Ron's red hair and a hand-me-down robe, Tom was actually busy supporting Rupert. Their off-screen relationship is defined by a joyful V in versatility, the ability to pivot from bitter foes to inseparable mates. Tom famously wore an I Heart Ron Weasley t-shirt to a premiere, a gesture that perfectly encapsulated their playful, supportive reality. This is the ultimate victory of their story. They proved that the magic of friendship is far more potent than any curse or hex. While Ron and Draco were often at each other's throats for a decade, Rupert and Tom have spent the years since the films ended celebrating each other's lives and careers. For fans, seeing the Death Eater and the Sidekick hugging at reunions provides a sense of closure that the books never quite gave their characters. They demonstrate that while blood status might have mattered to the Malfoys, the only status that matters to these two actors is that of best friends. Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston. Across the cosmic bridge of Asgard, no relationship was as volatile or as beloved as the tug-of-war between the god of thunder and the god of mischief. On screen, they were the V in valiance, a thundering collision between Thor's earnest, noble strength and Loki's silver-tongued, unpredictable shadows. Their friction was the emotional heartbeat of the Thor and Avengers sagas. Thor's desperate desire to trust his brother was met by Loki's relentless cycle of betrayal and yearning for the throne. Their dynamic was a masterclass in sibling complexity, shifting from brutal gladiatorial combat to moments of heartbreaking vulnerability. To the audience, they represented the universal struggle of family, the exhaustion of loving someone who constantly lets you down, and the undeniable bond that refuses to let go. However, once the capes were unclasped and the CGI lightning faded, That cosmic animosity transformed into one of Hollywood's most genuine and charismatic bromances. Far from the scripted backstabbing, Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston share a connection rooted in a shared journey toward global superstardom. While Loki was busy plotting his brother's downfall, Tom was actually busy cheering for Chris's success. Their off-screen relationship is defined by a joyful V in vivacity, an endless stream of playful banter, shared jokes during grueling press tours, and deep mutual respect. They didn't just play brothers, they became them, navigating the pressures of the MCU as a united front, proving that the best on-screen chemistry is built on a foundation of absolute off-screen trust. This is the ultimate victory of their story. They proved that a bond forged in the fires of creativity is stronger than any fictional rivalry. While Thor and Loki struggled to find peace for centuries, Chris and Tom have spent over a decade celebrating their shared legacy. For fans, seeing the strongest Avenger and the god of stories laughing together on a red carpet provides the happy ending the multiverse often denied their characters. They demonstrate that while Loki may be the master of illusions, the friendship between these two actors is the most beautiful reality of all. Lena Headey and Peter Dinklage. In the treacherous, wine-soaked halls of King's Landing, no hatred was as venomous or as deeply rooted as the one between Cersei and Tyrion Lannister. On screen, they were the V in vituperation, a relentless cycle of verbal warfare and mutual loathing. Cersei, the protective and power-hungry queen, blamed her younger brother for their mother's death and the downfall of their family, while Tyrion, the witty and rejected outcast, fought to survive her constant assassination attempts. Their friction was the psychological backbone of the series. Every shared scene crackled with the danger of a hidden dagger. To the audience, they represented the tragic poison of a broken family, a sibling bond where love had been completely replaced by a desperate, cold-blooded competition for survival and validation. However, the moment the heavy crowns were removed and the cameras stopped rolling, that lethal animosity dissolved into one of the most famous and delightful friendships in television history. Far from the scripted cruelty, Lena Headey and Peter Dinklage share a bond that is the definition of best friend goals. In fact, they were close friends long before the show began. It was actually Peter who recommended Lena for the role of Cersei. While their characters couldn't stand to be in the same room, the actors were often caught by paparazzi laughing, making faces, and exploring the city together between takes. Their off-screen relationship is defined by a joyful V in verity, an authentic, unshakable connection that allowed them to go to the darkest places on screen because they felt so safe with each other off-screen. This is the ultimate victory of their collaboration. They proved that the most convincing enemies are often played by those who love each other most in real life. While Cersei and Tyrion spent years plotting each other's deaths, Lena and Peter spent those years supporting each other through the pressures of global fame. For fans, knowing that the lioness and the imp are actually inseparable companions adds a layer of warmth to the brutal world of Westeros. They demonstrate that while the Lannisters always pay their debts, Lena and Peter have invested in something far more valuable, a friendship that outlasted the Iron Throne. Norman Reedus and Jeffrey Dean Morgan. In the rotting post-apocalyptic wasteland of The Walking Dead, the relationship between Daryl Dixon and Negan began in the darkest way possible, with a barbed-wired baseball bat and a traumatic cell in Sanctuary. On screen, they were the V in violence, a visceral clash between Daryl's feral, quiet loyalty and Negan's charismatic, terrifying tyranny. Their friction was the psychological anchor of the later seasons. Daryl represented the unbreakable spirit of the survivor, while Negan embodied the cruel pragmatism of a fallen world. To the audience, they represented a journey from pure hatred to a forced, uneasy alliance, a masterclass in how shared trauma can turn the bitterest of enemies into reluctant brothers-in-arms. However, once the prosthetic grime was washed off and the leather jackets were hung up, that on-screen trauma dissolved into one of the most famous and genuine bromances in modern television. Far from the scripted torture, Norman Reedus and Jeffrey Dean Morgan share a bond rooted in a deep, shared passion for life on the open road. Known as the Motorcycle Brothers of Hollywood, they spent their time between filming exploring the Georgia countryside on their bikes, turning their shared work into a lifelong adventure. Their off-screen relationship is defined by a joyful V in veracity, an authentic, unshakable friendship characterized by constant pranks, public I love yous, and a mutual support system that help them navigate the intense pressure of a global phenomenon. This is the ultimate victory of their collaboration. They proved that even the darkest stories can yield the brightest friendships. While Daryl and Negan struggled for years to exist in the same space without drawing blood, Norman and Jeffrey have built a creative and personal partnership that fans adore. Whether they are posing for goofy magazine covers or appearing on Norman's travel show together, their connection is a radiant example of how real-life camaraderie can make the most brutal fictional rivalries feel profound. They demonstrate that while the world might end, a true ride-or-die friendship never dies. Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart. In the fractured world of mutants and humans, the friendship between Eric Lensher and Charles Xavier was the ultimate tragedy of a dream divided. On screen, they were the V in variation, two brilliant minds with the same goal of mutant survival, but radically different visions of how to achieve it. Xavier was the hopeful architect of peace, believing in coexistence, while Magneto was the hardened anarchist who believed war was inevitable. Their friction was the soul of the X-Men franchise. Every chess match and battlefield confrontation crackled with the pain of two best friends forced to be enemies by the weight of history. To the audience, they represented the eternal struggle between pacifism and revolution, making their rivalry one of the most intellectually compelling stories in cinematic history. However, once the metal was bent and the telepathic links were closed, that cinematic conflict dissolved into the most iconic and heartwarming sermance in Hollywood. Far from the scripted battles, Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart share a bond that is a masterclass in lifelong companionship. Remarkably, they didn't become close until they shared a trailer on the set of the first X-Men in 2000. Through long conversations over tea and shared theatrical backgrounds, they discovered a kinship that transcended the screen. Their off-screen relationship is defined by a joyful V in veneration, a deep, mutual honoring of each other's talent and humanity. From officiating each other's weddings to exploring New York City in matching bowler hats, they have become the gold standard for supportive, joyous male friendship. This is the ultimate victory of their collaboration. They proved that the most intense intellectual rivalries on screen are best performed by those who share a foundation of absolute love off-screen. While Magneto and Professor X were tragically separated by their ideals, Ian and Patrick have remained inseparable in their reality. For fans, seeing these two knights of the stage and screen holding hands or laughing together is a beautiful reminder that while the world may be divided, the bridge built by a true friendship is indestructible. They demonstrate that the real superpower isn't telepathy or magnetism. It's the enduring power of a shared life. In the X-Men universe, the rivalry between Magneto and Professor X defines the V in variation, a tragic clash between a revolution fueled by pain and a dream built on peace. While Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart portrayed enemies locked in a cosmic chess match, their real-life sermance is the ultimate victory of friendship. They proved that while F of X represents their scripted conflict, their off-screen bond is a constant of pure love. But here is the real question. In a world of division, is Charles's hope or Eric's realism the true path to survival? Let us know your thoughts below.